Thank you for listening to Depictions Media Radio.
Well, good afternoon. Today we're seeing some sunlight.
Okay, good to go.
Break through the clouds.
Great. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm here in the Press Theatre at the Legislative Assembly on the traditional territory of the Lekwungen-speaking people, the Songhees and Esquimalt First Nations. We just wrapped up our weekly cabinet meeting. It was very productive, focusing on the issues that are important to British Columbians. Of course, addressing COVID-19 is always the top priority as we go through the agenda. We look at a range of issues, how we can help families, how we can ensure that the economy continues to be robust where it can be, and we focus on trying to stay open where possible. It's important, I think, for all British Columbians as we enter the middle part of February and look towards the spring, that we continue to focus collectively on keeping each other safe. We've got Lunar New Year just ahead of us, which will be different than any other Lunar New Year we've ever experienced in the Lower Mainland. People will be celebrating the Year of the Ox, but they'll be doing it in different ways. We have Family Day just around the corner, oftentimes an opportunity for people to get together, to travel, to experience the beauty of British Columbia, perhaps even leave the province and go elsewhere. That's not what we're doing this year. This year we want you to stay close and tight with your family here in BC. We want you to stay close and focused on making sure that we get well together as we come through the pandemic. Our resiliency has been quite extraordinary. As a province of some 5 million people, the data shows that we have collectively done very, very well over the past 12 months. And I appreciate it doesn't feel that way for many British Columbians, particularly those who have seen family members lose their life as a result of COVID-19. To those who have seen their businesses rocked by the transformation of our communities as a result of pandemic protocols. All of us are in this together. Some of us are feeling more pain than others. And I think it's important as we come into Family Day that we reflect on that. Maybe the blessings that we have in our community and also the challenges that others have in theirs. That's what's kept us going together over the past number of months. That's what will keep us together as we await the arrival of more vaccines this week, next week, and then many, many more vials as we get into March, April, and May. As we get our immunization program up and running fully when the federal government provides us with the vaccines that they're committed to, we're going to see changes in public health orders. We're going to be seeing changes in our daily lives. Let's look forward to those days, but let's not jump the gun. Let's make sure we focus on following public health orders until such time as it's safe to do otherwise. And with that, I'll ask Jen to monitor any questions you may have.
Reminder to media on the line, please press star 1 to enter the queue. Our first question today comes from Katie DeRosa, Vancouver Sun.
Hi, Premier. Thanks for taking my question. As you know, your Liberal colleagues have raised the issue of the meetings, cross-border meetings at Peace Arch Park, and Canadians and Americans meeting up there, up to 75 tents seen there, and wondering if you're going to ask Washington Governor Jay Inslee to have any action on that, or what can be done, especially given the presence of new variants, including the California variant.
Well, thanks for the question, Katie. And first of all, I didn't get to congratulate you on your appointment to the Vancouver Sun. Congratulations on that. With respect to Peace Arch Park, this has been an area of concern. I believe that the federal government is managing those issues as they should. The international borders are their responsibility. I do speak regularly with Governor Inslee. This is not an issue that we've discussed. We have discussed the challenges of residents of Point Roberts, U.S. citizens who must go through Canada to get to the United States. We've discussed a range of issues about our economy and how integrated we are, north-south, between British Columbia, Washington, Oregon, and California. And if we see persistent concerns around Peace Arch, I'll certainly raise that with the federal government, and they can take action with their counterparts in Washington, D.C. But this is not an area that's regulated by the states and the provinces, and I'm hopeful that those people who are coming together to see loved ones in that international space are doing so safely, and I'm confident. I've not seen any advice from Dr. Henry that this is a major issue. If that happens to be the case, we'll take action immediately.
Katie, do you have a follow-up?
Yes, thank you for that warm welcome. I appreciate that. As a follow-up, last week on Friday, Dr. Henry did say that the province is working with the federal government to increase screening at the U.S. border. So is there any progress on that? Are you pressuring the federal government to enhance screening, since a lot of the cross-border traffic, including essential travelers, including truck drivers, are not mandated to have the COVID test to come in? So what is being done between BC and the federal government on the border?
We are working with the federal government on the border, and we're very happy to see renewed enthusiasm from Ottawa on those issues, not just here in British Columbia, but more critically for case counts and infections, and of course the spring break on the horizon is the Ontario-Quebec borders. So I'm working regularly with Dominic LeBlanc, the Minister of Intergovernmental Relations, as well as the Prime Minister on these issues. When it comes to Dr. Henry's advice and counsel to other colleagues across the country, particularly when it comes to keeping our supply chains open, and I know you appreciate by the way you put the question, we need to keep trucking active and ongoing to make sure we've got food in our stores and other essential goods coming from the U.S. into British Columbia. But that doesn't mean we relax our restrictions. It doesn't mean we relax public health orders, and Dr. Henry's working with her opposites across the country to reinforce that.
As part of the Ontario Our next question is from Binder Sajjan, CTV.
Temporary province-wide shutdown in January. Hi, Premier. We are learning that only 12% of people who've been fined for breaking quarantine or the group gatherings COVID law have actually paid their fines. And it looks like more than 50% are fighting the ticket in court, probably hoping that they'll be thrown out by a judge. Just wondering what your reaction to this is, and would you like to see more people face criminal justice rather than just being fined?
Well, I know that when it comes to these pop-up nightclubs, the one in Vancouver that was quite prominent, and another one, I believe, that's under investigation in Surrey, law enforcement has every intention of pressing charges. That will lead, of course, to court action. And I think that's appropriate. When people are deliberately disregarding the well-being of other British Columbians, we need to have more than just a slap on the wrist, more than just a fine. I'll leave those to law enforcement and to the Minister of Public Safety, Mike Farnworth, to manage and address, but I'm confident that we put in place a regime when it comes to public health and public safety that most British Columbians are following, and I think it's important, and I appreciate that the anomalies become newsworthy, but I think it's important that I take this opportunity to say that the overwhelming majority of British Columbians are rock solid when it comes to abiding by public health orders, and in fact, as you know, there are many people that are telling us we should go even further. We're trying to find that balance to make sure that people can continue to exercise their good judgment, but when that judgment becomes bad judgment, we have tools at our disposal to take action. We'll continue to do that.
Binder, do you have a follow-up?
We are taking a cautious approach. Yes, and speaking of those who don't follow the rules, there are a couple of churches that continue to have in-person services, and I understand the province is seeking an injunction. Just wondering, how big of a worry is this for you, and are you worried that the relationship there between faith leaders and the province and public health has broken down?
No, not well. Certainly, in the case of those who have taken legal action against Dr. Henry and public health, that's the case you're talking about. That was not action by the province. That was a response to action by a small number of faith communities. The overwhelming majority of faith leaders and those who are people of faith across the province, whatever denomination they might be, whatever faith they practice, have been following the orders, sometimes reluctantly, to be sure. But we've talked regularly, Dr. Henry and Minister Dix and I think we've had at least a half a dozen large conferences with people of faith, faith leaders. We've set up a table for dialogue at the WASC Center with a facilitator to make sure that we're hearing clearly from those that are concerned about the long delays between people coming to gather together in person. And as we see our vaccine vaccination program take hold, as we see the case count continue to drop, I think we're going to be pleasantly surprised at how this collaboration and positive working relationship will lead to a more accelerated reduction of those public health orders. Dr. Henry's intimated to that as recently as last week. We're not out of the woods yet. As I say, we've got a dialogue set up at the WASP Centre in Vancouver. We're engaging virtually with people all the time. There are a small group of people who believe that this is something that should be litigated. Dr. Henry, by seeking the injunction on advice from the Attorney General's ministry, was just following procedure. This was not something we initiated. It's a defensive posture. I believe that, as I say, the vast majority of people of faith understand and recognize that they have a responsibility to their loved ones and those that they don't even know to follow health orders to keep everybody safe.
Next question is from Justine Hunter, Globe and Mail.
Hi, Premier. I have a question that's actually not about COVID. You ended trophy hunting of grizzlies a few years back because of strong public opposition. I want to ask you about a different kind of recreational hunting. There's a big game hunter from Victoria who's killing wolves here on the island, and it looks like it's out in Souk. And she's announced on her Instagram feed that her goal is to trap and kill an entire pack. As far as I can tell, this is legal, but I'm wondering what your thoughts are if there's social license for that kind of hunting here on the island.
Well, I'm surprised that a constituent of mine would undertake such activity. This is not familiar to me, Justine. I've hearing this for the first time. I can't comment on the legality of it. I'm not familiar with what permits are required, what permits this individual may have. I can tell you that it would certainly be counter to the sentiment in the community when one lone wolf was relocated to the western part of my constituency and then shot by a hunter. The groundswell of frustration and anger at that single wolf kill was significant. I know that we as a province use the Wildlife Act to manage and protect caribou, for example, that are endangered species. We're required to protect them, and I get mail constantly prior to being Premier, mail about how people are passionate about wolves here in British Columbia, and so I would be surprised that there would be a lot of appetite, certainly in my community and indeed across the province, for the type of behavior that you've suggested to me. But I'm unfamiliar with it. I'll commit to you to take a look at it, and perhaps Jen can get back to you before your deadline.
Do you follow up, Justine?
There actually is very little data on wolf populations. I'm just wondering if generally you think it would be a good idea for BC to have more detailed information before we allow. I mean, this is, as I understand, a legal hunt because there's no license required to hunt wolves specifically.
Sure, that's correct. I'm not sure that's correct. And again, the wolf populations on Vancouver Island are very small. There's been a recurrence of wolf populations in the Long Beach area. I know we hear tourists talking about that, but again, I'm not certain about the details. I'm sorry to cut your question off in full stream. I thought you might want to try another one, because I can't answer more than I've already answered on that one.
So is the
we'll follow up. Thank you.
25% limit.
Next question is from Richard Zisman, Global.
Frankly, it acknowledges that we
back to the Peace Arch Park. You were mentioning that it's federal jurisdiction, but in the summer the province did take action to close down the BC side of the park, citing at the time concerns around how busy it had gotten. So why not create an encouragement to do the same thing on the Washington side, considering we're now seeing tents? And there is significant concern with Valentine's Day coming up that we may potentially see an increase in the amount of traffic at the park.
Well, far be it from me to get in the way of those who love each other, Richard. But again, these are issues for the federal government to deal with. Dr. Henry has not raised it with me that it's a concern. If at the end of this press conference I've got a voicemail from her that tells me otherwise, I'm happy to get back to you. But my sense is that we want to encourage people to have good behavior. And if the people who are coming to from the south to the U.S. side of Peace Arch and they're meeting with their loved ones for brief visits, I'm reluctant to get in the way of that. If it is a bigger problem than I'm expecting, then I'm sure Dr. Henry will advise and we'll take action.
Well, I
Do you have a
appreciate the
follow-up, Richard?
question, Mike, and it's a good question.
As we look
I
towards
listen
the
100%,
beginning of
not
March
99.9%,
and mass
100%
vaccination plans
to
for
Dr.
those
Williams and the health
80
table
plus,
and
do you have
all
any
the
concerns
other,
around
health leaders
reaching
in
these
our
people in
community,
communities,
CEOs of
especially when it
hospitals,
comes
public health units,
to those
to
that
talk to them
potentially have
frequently,
language barriers
and
or
they
health
give us the
issues
best advice
to
they
get
can
to
at
local
that
clinics?
given
Like, is
time.
there any thought being
As
given
everyone has
to
seen,
going directly to
COVID-19
those? We know that
moves
long-term
rapidly.
care is a little
The
bit
variants,
easier because they all live in
moves
the same
rapidly.
area. Do you
It's
have
very
any
fluid.
concerns about going
What
out
we
in
do in
community to
January,
reach the 80-plus group?
is not
Well,
necessarily
again,
what we do in
thank you for
February
that
or
question.
March,
We
but
have been working
I give all
on
the
that
credit,
diligently
honestly, to the
since
people of Ontario.
December when
If it
we
wasn't for them,
got
we
word that
wouldn't be in this
vaccines
situation.
were on the way.
If the people didn't
We have
listen
within
to
our
the
government
guidance and
caucus
protocol
a
of the
diverse
chief
group
medical
of people,
officer, it
multilingual,
would
Punjabi,
be,
Cantonese,
disaster.
Mandarin,
There are still some
Filipino,
hospitals, yes, we've seen a little decline.
Mabel Elmore can speak to Filipino residents of the Lower Mainland and across the province. So we're going to be using the talents we have within our caucus. I'll reach out to Shirley Bond and see if there are Liberals in her caucus that have multiple languages at their disposal. We're going to ask all members of the legislature to reach out to people they know to be in the cohort that we're looking for to start vaccinations, the 80 pluses. We're asking neighbors of people who are isolated who may not have access to technology. If you know you've got an elderly person living next door to you, contact public health, take that step, be a good Samaritan, be a good neighbor, and all of us working together I'm hopeful we'll see a positive vaccine rollout in the very, very near future. We were hoping to be well advanced at this point. Events beyond our control have put us back a little bit, but we have confidence that the commitments from the federal government for Pfizer vaccines this week and next week and beyond will get us on track, and we'll have a lot of work to do. And I'm confident that 2 months from now we're going to be asking for patience from the public. But for right now, I'm hoping that you'll contact your elderly neighbor, let he or she know that vaccines are on the way, and help them register, help them get to a clinic that will be well advertised. But any help people can offer will be gratefully received.
Next question is from Mary Griffin Check.
And when they come available, and only when it's really essential.
Oh, hi. Thank you so much for taking my call. I'm just following the story on the changes at the Royal BC Museum Premier, and the museum is not making anyone available today, but I did speak with Chief Don Tom from the Sartlet First Nation, and he says in light of all the allegations that have come out regarding systemic racism, he wants the province to introduce legislation to address systemic racism against Indigenous people, because policy is not enough. It's not working. What are your thoughts?
Well, thank you, Mary, for the question. And as a born and raised Victorian, the Royal BC Museum is very important to me. I was very concerned when I heard allegations of racism within the museum. I understand that the board of the museum has met with the CEO, and they've come to agreement that Jack will depart later this month. And I wish him all the best and thank him for his service to BC. The board chair will be taking over as interim CEO. You will also know that I appointed Melanie Mark, the only Indigenous woman in the legislature, to be the minister responsible for the Royal BC Museum. And Melanie takes these issues, as you can well imagine, very seriously. She's working with the Public Service Agency to make sure that any of the allegations are fully followed up. And also, of course, with respect to Chief Tom's comments about legislation, we are working on legislation that we hope to introduce this year, anti-racism legislation, not just towards Indigenous peoples, but across the board. In addition to that, we have the the legislature has a standing committee looking at the Police Act specifically to update that document, some 50-year-old document, to better reflect the diversity in our community, to better reflect concerns about systemic racism across the piece. So we are taking action. We need to keep going. We need the public to understand that it's not good enough, and I've learned this, and all of us need to embrace the notion that we are all in this together, and we need to understand racism, and we need to bring forward legislation to ensure that we have anti-racism policies, not just tip our cap when we see it and condemn it, but to make sure we have policies and legislation in place to protect the diverse people of our great province.
Mary, do you have a follow-up?
their bubble.
I do. Thanks very much. Minister Mark, as you were saying, there is an investigation underway with the Public Service Agency, and I'm just wondering when that report is complete, will it be made public, and do you have a timeline on that?
I have no timeline on the report, Mary. Certainly the findings will be made public. I know the board takes this very seriously, as do senior staff at the museum. Again, I was alarmed by the allegations and multiple allegations. Work's being done in that regard, and when we have more to say, I'm sure Minister Mark will lead that discussion. And again, I want to just reinforce that nobody takes this more seriously than Minister Mark, and I'm grateful that she is in place at this difficult time for not just the leadership, of course, at the museum, but all of those across British Columbia who look so fondly at the museum as a public asset, a real jewel for all British Columbians. We're working on a revitalization plan to modernize the facility. We're working with the federal government because we want Canada to understand that the artifacts and the archival materials and everything that's contained at the Royal BC Museum is a treasure for all Canadians, and we need to have a respectful workplace. We need to make sure that it's open to everyone to come free of fear of any persecution or any hints of racism. And Melanie will take that very seriously, and we'll talk to you when she can.
Our next question is from Lisa Eusden, News 1130.
Can increase the rates exponentially. So that's why we want
to
wait a week to see
here. Sorry.
Just
following up a little bit on the churches and fines not being paid and churches going to court. I'm just wondering what your concern is of the cost of taxpayers, the cost of court time, of all of these things being battled in court and the lawyers required for that.
Well, I would prefer that not be the case, but not just people, but organizations have every right to proceed to legal action if they feel that's their only recourse. We're confident that the public health orders that have been put in place by Dr. Henry and the emergency orders that we put in place are constitutional. We have the ability to do this. We're protecting the public interest. There are a small group of people that disagree with that. I want to reiterate the faith community, leadership in the faith community have been stellar across the board. This is very difficult for people who congregate weekly, sometimes many times in a week, to celebrate their faith, whatever it might be. And nobody wants to get in the way of that, but we're in a global pandemic, and I want to just pay tribute to those who have been abiding by the rules, abiding by the public health orders, not just in the faith community, but across the board. People have made extraordinary sacrifices, and we should never diminish that. But we're not out of the woods yet, and if there are those that feel that the courts are the best course of action for them, they have every right to do that. I disagree, and they'll have their day in court, and I will continue to thank the many, many thousands of British Columbians who are abiding by the rules because they know it's in not just their interest and their family's interest, but British Columbia's interest as well.
Do you have a follow-up, Lisa?
Vast majority of people. Yes, regarding ski hills, we received a document yesterday that some of the ski communities have put together, I guess essentially trying to combat COVID cases that we've seen there. And I'm wondering what your concerns is with the ski hills. I don't know if you've seen this document, if you think the ski hills are doing enough to combat any ski communities, to combat the après-ski activities that are leading to cases spreading.
Well, firstly, it's not the activity of skiing that's the problem. That is perhaps among the safest things you can do with your mask on and your helmet on, swooshing down the hill, clearing your head, getting physical activity, being emotionally recharged. The challenge is after you come down the hill, what do you do from there? We're encouraging people and have been for some time now, enjoy your day on the hill, the closest hill you can get to from home, and then go home. The après-ski activity is where we're seeing an increase in cases. In some jurisdictions, border towns like Fernie, for example, the case counts are way down. Skiing continues to take place. People are making better choices. So I want to applaud not just the ski hill sector, not just that industry, but all industries who have taken steps to put in place action plans so they can continue to operate, whether it's restaurants, whether it's the salon sector, whether it's it's construction, whether it's manufacturing, whatever we do in British Columbia, business owners, workers have taken steps to put in place action plans so they can continue to operate, they can continue to get a wage, continue to put food on their table. And the ski hill industry is doing just that, and I commend them for it. The trick now is that once you've had your ski, go home. It's as simple as that. And if we can reduce the transmission that's happening off the hill, I think we'll be in a much better place. And as the weeks go by, the next 10 weeks, Minister Dix and I are both very, very concerned about, as we ramp up vaccinations, as we see better weather, people will start to relax and let down their guard. This is not the time to do that. We need to keep at it, people. We've been successful. It doesn't feel that way for many people, I know, but as a province, we're doing way better than others, and we need to keep focused on that.
Our next question is from Tom Fletcher, Black Press.
In my office every single week.
Hi, Premier. Another non-COVID question for you. Salmon farms in the Discovery Islands, they got the green light from Fisheries and Oceans scientists as recommended by the Cohen Commission, but they are shutting down anyway. Your government initiated this. Is this the right outcome?
In Peterborough.
We didn't initiate the discovery issues. We were focused on the Broughton. We put in place a process, as you know, Tom, to bring industry, workers, communities, Indigenous peoples together and put in place a plan that would see a slow reduction in open net pens in the Broughton Archipelago. It was why.
Let me tell you what Marion has done. You know, this is why I love the seniors. They've went through so many issues throughout their lives, be it the war and challenges and new Canadians that have come here.
Lauded by environmentalists, by Indigenous peoples.
I've heard all these stories. And Marion, this is what I'm talking about, our seniors. She has made 2,900 masks herself.
Their plan is to mitigate the job loss, for example. That, in this case, is the responsibility of the federal government, and they need to step up. I've made that clear to them, and we're working on that. Minister Calwan is in correspondence with the industry minister in Ottawa, as well as the fisheries minister, and we're hopeful that we can come up with a resolution that meets the needs of workers, the businesses there, Indigenous peoples, and as well as those who are passionate about wild salmon, as I am.
And she puts
these
on public benches to help people.
Yes, thank you. Well, the federal minister has indicated that this was for reconciliation. Isn't this an example of the Indigenous veto that is implied by the UN Declaration?
Well, again, a good question, Tom. The federal government has not yet passed a Declaration Act as we have here. We did that at the same time we were sitting down with industry, with First Nations, with communities, with workers, to find a way forward that met everybody's needs. The federal government didn't do that. If the federal minister is saying that this is a start towards reconciliation, I'd have to respectfully disagree. We need everybody together to find a way forward. That's been what we've done with respect to fish farming. That's what we've done with respect to the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. We have led the way in Canada. If Canada wants to follow us, that's great, but it's not a one-step process. It's a multiple-step process, and we're confident that the programs that we have in place will protect workers. We're confident that our commitment to wild salmon, unprecedented expenditures by a provincial government in an area of federal responsibility, because salmon don't know jurisdictions. They don't know borders. They know that they go up the river and then their offspring come down the river, and they've been doing that for millennia, and we want that to continue to happen. So I think that we need to do all of these things at the same time. It's not easy, it's difficult, but nobody said that it would be a walk in the park, or everyone would have already done it by now.
Next question is from Rob Buffum, CTV Vancouver Island.
Oh, thank you for taking my question. Premier, I'm hoping to get your reaction to the head of Destination Greater Victoria.
It is a tremendous privilege
critical of the federal government's
to welcome President Biden and Vice President Harris to the Department of Defense.
Embracing technologies like rapid testing. What's your reaction to that?
Their visit to the Pentagon shows the importance that they place on our national security
and confidence in
and
rapid
importantly,
testing. Dr. Henry,
the deep value that they place in the men and women of our
taking
department.
Advantage of the abundance of rapid
I've
tests
had the
we have
privilege
available,
of working
but
closely
there are a good number
with
of false
President Biden to
positives and
tackle
also
tough
false
issues
negatives
under
as a result
intense
of those tests,
and often
that's been a
high-pressure
concern of ours from the
situations.
beginning. With respect
And I know
to the cruise ship
firsthand his
industry, I
commitment
know
to
that this is a
defending our
big
nation
blow for
and
Victoria,
his steadfast
parts of
support
Vancouver, and
of the
even
men
up
and
island
women
and beyond
that
into
he now
Prince
leads
Rupert
as our
and
commander-in-chief.
Alaska. But I'm confident
He knows well the
if you talk to
necessity
the vast
of
majority
making
people
tough
in Victoria,
choices with
they
regard
would be
to
hailing this decision.
our scarce
we are
resources
not comfortable as a
and
community
the importance
to welcome
of
the world back to
revitalizing
British
our
Columbia
alliances
until the world gets their
and our
act together
partnerships.
when it comes to COVID-19.
And he knows
and,
we in
having
this
assurances
department
that thousands and thousands
will
and thousands of
always
people
be ready to
will
fight and win
disgorging
should he call
at
upon us.
Ogden Point and waiting
also
around a
believes
rapid
that
test that may or may
his
not
first
be
call
accurate
should be
is
to our
probably
diplomats
not going to meet
with
the
us
test
in full
of the vast
support.
majority of Victorians.
And when the President talks about leading from a position of
Depend
strength,
on the cruise ship industry.
this is what he means.
We're not at that stage yet, and
The strength that comes from teamwork and cooperation,
again, as I've said a couple times
and from
today,
defense and
manage the
diplomacy,
international
working together
borders. I
with
was,
agency partners and
very,
allies.
very anxious for them to do so 12
Allies
months
big and
ago,
small.
and I'm grateful that they're continuing to do that.
And that's how he is marshaling our government's response to the
I do.
COVID-19
I'm wondering
pandemic.
in relation to, we've talked about the fact that as
And it's how he started to take on some of the most challenging threats we face around the world.
And the rest of us. But
Mr. President, thank you for visiting us today and for the trust and confidence that you've placed in us.
Rely on that foot traffic. And
We will do all we can to make sure that you and Vice President Harris
or ended come
are
this
always
summer.
leading from that
Is there
position
any
of strength.
contemplation of giving specific relief to tourism
And Madam Vice
businesses
President,
won't
I
have
know
those
that you
subsidies,
share the
perhaps?
President's
You'll get the
vision
double whammy of not having that
and that you believe strongly in the work that we do to defend our
Your
nation.
government would consider giving extra
In your
subsidies
lifetime
to
of
those
support to the
tourism
American
businesses.
people and your
we
outstanding
are working on that.
and
The Tourism
outspoken
Association
support
has been meeting with
of
Minister
service
Mark and
members,
meeting with
especially our
Minister Kalon
veterans,
about how we can continue to
gives
help
me
not
great
just those small
confidence
businesses, but large businesses.
that you will
like,
fight to make sure
which are
that our
gardens who
military
depend
remains
on
the
a lot of foot
strongest
traffic to employ a
and the
lot
most
of people.
capable fighting force
These major attractions are not eligible
And so we're
for some
grateful
of the
for your
small
support,
business grants
and
that
I
we
look
have on
forward
the
to
table.
working
So
with
we're
you
looking at
to
how we
tackle
can
our
help
country's
these larger
most pressing
businesses that
security
are almost
challenges
solely dependent
in the year
on
ahead.
international travelers and
Mr.
the
President
visitor
and
economy.
Madam Vice President,
I want to
thanks
see
again
that come
for
back as
honoring
quickly
us
as
with your
possible,
visit.
But I know the vast majority
And so now,
of British
ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure
will disagree with that
to
until such
introduce
time
the Vice
as there's
President of the
evidence
United
that
States,
the world, not just
Kamala Harris.
Washington State and people going to Peace Arch Park, but the world has got their act together here, and we all want that to happen as quickly as possible, whether you're in the tourism business or not. I would want, the Coho Ferry hasn't run for almost a year, and it had one unscheduled stop in 60 years before that. And the number of people that get off the Coho every day and stay here for a long period of time has had a far greater impact on businesses than those that have a 3-hour, 4-hour, 5-hour stop
and for your leadership
at the cruise ship
and
terminal.
to the
So there are a
personnel
whole
here at
host
the
of other
Pentagon,
tourism
both civilian and
opportunities
uniformed.
that we need to explore.
Thank you for
and
your
I'll leave it to the federal
dedication
government to
and for your
answer for
discipline.
why they moved it
And
all the way to
thank you for
2022.
keeping our
That was their
nation
decision,
safe.
not ours.
Over the
are
years,
certainly,
I have
grateful
visited
that they're
bases in
focused on
California, and
keeping
I've
our
also
borders
traveled
secure
to meet
until
with
such
service
time as we
members
see
stationed
positive
in
outcomes
Iraq
around
and
the world.
Afghanistan.
We have time for
The service
one last
members I've
question,
met,
and that's going
our
to come
troops
from
around the
Rafferty
world,
Baker, CBC.
face daunting challenges, but they do not
Premier,
flinch.
do you have any plans
They do not
to
let their
delay or
energy flag.
postpone spring break
They
because of the current
defend
state of the
our
COVID
country.
pandemic in BC?
They deter
and what are you
our
asking
enemies,
of people of this
and they
province and
sometimes
other
do it all
provinces?
thousands
spring
of
break that's
miles
different
away
from
from their
last year.
homes and their families.
Well, no, we have no plans to
Service
to
and
amend the spring
sacrifice
break.
is
As
in
you'll
your
know, British
DNA.
Columbia has tried to keep
It defines
when it
who
comes
you
to
are.
school-aged children. We're trying to keep a
defines
sense of
what you
normalcy
do.
when it comes to our
It
K-12
defines
system.
how we lead
when spring break
worldwide.
arrives, our advice will be,
And
as it
today,
has been
as
for
we
months
face
and months
global
and months,
threats to our
stay
climate
close to home
and to our health,
try and stay
to
within
our physical security
known
and
bubbles. Don't
cybersecurity.
go engaging in reckless
work
behavior.
is of
do
profound
your level
importance
best to stay
and
safe,
consequence.
keep other people safe
And that's
around
why
you.
the President
That's
and I
the
are
plan
here
at the
today
moment. I know other
to tell
jurisdictions
you
who
that
don't
we
have the same
stand
opportunities
with
for good weather as we
and
do
we
here in
stand
BC. Are
for
worried
you.
about what will happen at
You
spring
are the
break when
best
people in, say, Quebec
and
and
the
Ontario
bravest
normally
fighting
migrate
force
in large
in the
numbers
world.
to Florida and
You know that
and,
success
South
comes
Carolina.
not just from
we
training
don't,
and equipment.
We don't
though
have that
that is
concern
certainly
here.
crucial.
People will probably be pretty
But
happy
also
to stay in British
from
Columbia
clarity,
and take
in
advantage of the
vision
many opportunities
and
they have
in
here.
mission,
Rafa,
in
did you have a follow-up?
strategy and in tactics. It comes not only from
And
force,
Prime
though
Minister
when we must
Trudeau
fight,
again this
we will
morning mentioned
fight
that
to
it's the
win,
responsibility of
but also
provinces
from
to
diplomacy,
implement their own border
development,
restrictions. Any specific
and our
restrictions
democratic
that would be put in
principles.
place in BC
That
for
is
that
what
spring
we
break
pledge
period?
to you.
See,
we will
in-
always
in-
honor
internal
your
borders,
service
internal
and
borders.
sacrifice. We will
Yes,
always
yeah.
support you.
Yeah. Not at this
Because
time.
your
We
success
have staff
ensures
working
our
on
nation's
various
security.
plans and protocols that
Because
we
your
could put in place. We don't want to be
ensures
caught short there.
our
We
nation's
have
success.
been working with various
You have
officials, those
wise
that we
and
used
steadfast leadership
to
in
shore up the
Secretary
federal
Austin
government
and Chairman
back
Miller.
last March
And you
and
have a
April
commander-in-chief.
by putting provincial
We have a
government
commander-in-chief
workers
in our
at
country
various border
who
points
knows
across
from
the U.S.
personal
border.
experience
We're looking
burden
at those
that you and
plans,
your
but we have
families
no
carry.
plan
He
at
has
this
so
point
much
to implement
respect
them, but we
for
are
each and every one
preparing.
of you,
And
as
again,
do I.
I've talked to premiers
As
across
you know,
the country,
this is
and I
Black
encourage
History
them,
Month,
as I encourage
and while we
the
celebrate
Prime Minister
that
to
part
tell
of
people
America's
to stay where they
history
are.
every day,
If you don't need
let
to be
us
coming to
honor
British
also
Columbia, you
today
shouldn't come to British
the
Columbia.
black soldiers
we will
who
welcome
fought
you
at the Battle of Bunker
when
Hill,
the pandemic has
the black
subsided.
infantrymen
But you're
of
not
the
welcome
Civil
today,
War,
and it pains me
black
to say
waves
that.
of
But
World
the
War
best
II,
course of action is
the
for
many
people to
courageous
stay where they are,
Americans
and
who
that's what I'm
throughout
asking
our
British
history
Columbians to do. And I
have
hope that
answered the
the
call
premiers
to
of
duty.
other provinces will say the same
They
thing to
didn't
their
just
citizens.
join to
And
make history.
the federal government, the
They
Prime Minister, has
joined
been
to
saying
serve.
that for a couple of weeks now.
And all of
If you
you
don't have to travel,
joined
don't travel,
to
and
serve.
that holds firm
So,
well through spring
as we
break.
next hear from our president,
We're
let me
gonna tell
just
the time
end
up.
where I began. A few months ago in Ohio, I met the mother of one of the service members I met in Kabul, a soldier by the name of Shayla. And her mother was so proud of her daughter. And she came up to me and she said, "You remember my daughter?" She showed me a picture of her. And she asked me would I call Shayla and leave her a message. And it was a simple message. I told her how thankful I was and her nation is for her service. And I'm thankful to all of you. And of course, so is our president, your president. So is our nation. So may God bless you, and may God bless America. I think we're going to switch now and introduce the president.
I'm sorry.
Are you going to introduce the president?
Well, thank you, Madam Vice President. Now, if I may, just a few more words before the President takes the podium. And these words are about family. As most of you know, I had the privilege of serving with his son, Bo, in Iraq, when Bo was a captain with the Delaware National Guard. And Bo was an absolutely outstanding officer and a good man.
This show has been produced by Depictions Media. Please contact us at depictions.media for more information.